Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today, Juliet Wright. She's the founder, director of brand development and the creative director at Tally Creative. She is a creative brand stylist and visionary entrepreneur who is passionate about crafting compelling narratives that elevate personal and business brands. With a focus on strong identity and deep connection, she helps authors, speakers, and founders build captivating brands that not only stand out, but also resonate with their audience. Her goal is to create unique experiences that engage, inspire, and amplify a brand's impact in the marketplace, making each client's unique story unforgettable. Her journey started in 2003 as a corporate photographer, traveling the world in search of the magic moments that make brands come alive. The global perspective that she acquired has shaped her ability to transform not just brands, but the way they're perceived, experienced, and remembered. So without further ado, let me introduce you all to Juliet Wright. How are you, Juliet?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me here today.
I'm so glad you are here, Juliet. You know, we met at the Y conference in September. Can you believe it's been almost a month already? And you gave such a dynamic, incredible presentation. You took something that could be really scary and really complex, and you helped everybody in the room, especially me, just kind of say, now I get it. So you have such a tremendous way of explaining things in a great way. You're a fabulous presenter. If anybody's listening is looking for a keynote speaker, let me tell you, this is someone you want to have to talk about brand, and who doesn't need an update on their brand. I especially love, Juliet, the way you started your talk. And I don't know if this is something you do all the time, but I thought it was such a genius idea that I have figured out a way to incorporate it into my talks on leadership. But do you want to do it? Do you just kind of look at our audience and do what you did to us? Because I thought it was genius. I'm going to put you on solo and let people experience this.
Yeah. So I feel like in this world, branding, marketing, and advertising often is kind of this jumbled mess. Branding, marketing, advertising, oftentimes they share a budget line or maybe a position within the company, and no one is ever really clear on the order that they should be done in or what falls in what. It seems like it's a confusion that's industry-wide, not just for a specific industry, but just nationwide. No one quite knows how those three work together. And so I feel like I've kind of cracked the code and love to share that in the most simple way. So the way I like to describe branding, marketing, and advertising is a campfire. So if you can picture a campfire, and there's three elements. So first, the most important thing when you're starting a campfire is the foundation. It's the logs and the kindling, the base. And anyone who's a little bit of a pyromaniac knows that base is so important. And so for me, that base is your brand. The big logs symbolize things like maybe your name, your logo, your website, some of those bigger pieces that we think of, often visual when we think of a brand. But brands are really made up of hundreds of elements. So if you kind of think of all the little twigs, the kindling, the leaves, maybe the newspaper that you use to build that foundation, everything from if you show up early or late, what kind of pen you use when you take notes, what you wear when you walk on stage, the type of handshake you give, what your office looks like, the temperature that you keep your meetings. These are all part of your brand that are ultimately the foundation and should be done with intention. Then I say next, once your brand is solid, that's when it's time to move on to the marketing. The marketing is living and breathing. For me, it's that fire on the campfire. So the easiest way I like to describe marketing is it's simply answering the questions before they've been asked. So if you're looking for a solid marketing strategy, one thing you can do is you can list out the 100 most frequently asked questions that your company would get, and all you have to do is answer them. And once you get to number 100, you simply just start again because you have a new audience, and even people who heard the answer the first time are probably ready to hear it again. So marketing, again, like that flame, is living, breathing, it's ongoing. I always think of advertising as the third step. Advertising is simply amplifying what's already happening. So because you have that solid base, because you have your fire burning, by putting some advertising or some lighter fluid on top, you're simply amplifying what already is. So advertising can be anything from Google ads to handing out flyers to paying for a trade show booth. All of those pieces of advertising are amplifying what's already happening, the message you're already putting out in the world. The number one problem that I see is people do these out of order, especially if they do them backwards. So I always say that if you are spending dollars on advertising, or maybe not even dollars, but effort and energy, and you don't feel like your advertising is going as far as it should, I would challenge you to take a pause and look and just make sure that you're not pouring that lighter fluid on a cement slab. So you really need to make sure that you have that brand in place, you have your marketing solid, and then the advertising on top. And that's really how you create an effective strategy. And when you're looking at your budget, your timeline, where you're putting your effort and energy, make sure that it's done branding first, marketing second, advertising third. So that's the most simple way I can explain it. And really, that's what I love to do in everything. Just really take a concept and make it as clean and simple and memorable as possible.
I love that you brought up the simplicity of it, Julia, because I think, one of the things that I've learned, and you and I share a couple of, let's talk about your YOS. We share a couple of
Yeah.
in our Y operating system, we share a couple of categories. You have make sense and challenge. Your YOS,
Mhm.
better way, make sense and challenge. So in everything you do, you're always looking for ways to make it better. And that's obvious in the approach you take to how you help
Mhm.
people build brands, the books you've written. You're constantly looking for a better way and then sharing it with others. How you do that is by making sense of the complex and challenging. So you help people make sense, like you just did about
Mhm.
marketing, advertising, and branding. You helped us make sense of it very quickly. You can make sense of it quickly, and then you've shared it with us because it's a better way of doing it. And then ultimately, what you do, what you deliver, is something that's out of the box and different because you're what is challenge. So when I look at that and I look at the fact that I'm contribute, challenge, and make sense, we both kind of tend to look at things outside the box. We both tend to
Mhm.
solve problems quickly. And that's probably why we had such a great initial connection. And now
Mhm.
as I look at everything you've done, is I read your book, which is amazing. Coming in hot, by the way. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll put a link to it if you want to get a copy of it. Get a chance to dig deep into everything that Juliet just kind of gave us in a synopsis, but learn more about how you can implement that. It's called Coming in Hot by Juliet Wright, and you can find it on Amazon, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that book I kept it really simple. It's only about 95 pages. I wanted a book that you could read in one flight or, a couple hours sitting at your desk. So it's a very short book, and the chapters each have a story to really drive home the message. And then at the end of each chapter, there's a couple questions to go through. So if you do want to build your brand on your own, then I'm fully an open source type of gal, and I want to help you. So it's actually been picked up by the University of Nebraska's Engler Entrepreneur Program and other programs. It's a great book that offices have gone through together just so they can use the same language when it comes to their branding, their marketing, and their advertising. So, yes, it's meant to be a very quick, easy read that hopefully sparks some conversations and some change.
Well, and it will, Juliet, because it's done it for me. My team we're all trying to do everything we can in a simple way as possible, given our size and what we're trying to do. to implement some of those great lessons that you share in the book. The other thing I was going to talk about is this was a really genius thing you did. I don't know how many of you are keynoters, but you're looking for a way to wake up your audience. One of the things Julia did, it was so fun. She got up and she said, oh, by the way, I knew who was going to be here, and I asked for some information about some of you. And I did a review, and I think you called it an audit of
Uh-huh.
some of your websites. And so rather than tell you about what I do, I'm going to show you. And what was really cool that you did is you could tell everybody in the room, like, maybe some people were like, yes, pull up my website. But one of the things you said, if you had any hesitation at all, you were saying, please don't pull up mine because my picture's old. There are dead links. My website's not optimized. If you're not proud of your website, don't worry. We're not actually live auditing
Yeah.
that. And you could see the air in the room just come back like, oh gosh, thank you. Right.
Yeah.
But what a great way to bring to life the necessity, the importance
Yeah.
of having a website that represents you. Um,
Yeah.
how did you come up with that great opening?
Oh,
And I think it's amazing. And tell us what the purpose of it is, and
right.
we all know, and then how wonderfully it led to everybody being so open to your talk.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the second time I've done that in a keynote. And it's funny because the one that I did the first time was almost a year ago. And I still have people come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I could have just strangled you when I thought that was my website. I was so nervous. And the goal with that exercise, as I have a spinning wheel spinning and people really think that there's a chance that their website could come up, what I'm trying to capture is how you feel. Because oftentimes with our head, we can say, well, I don't have money for the new website, or this is good enough, and oftentimes we can justify things in our head. But I always like to remind people that yes, your brand is for the outside world. It is for potential clients. It is for joint ventures and other partnerships, but also your brand is for you. It's how you feel. So just like when you get a haircut, you could say, well, haircuts are so that I look nice to other people. You can't see your own hair. But when you get a haircut, you leave that salon and you stand up a little taller and you feel a little bit more confident and you're going to go about your day in a different way. And I think brand is the same way. So when we are proud of our brand, when somebody says, oh, I just looked at your website, capture what you feel. Is it excitement like, oh, awesome. My work is already done. They're already probably 90% sold. Or do you get a little butterflies in your stomach of, oh no, I hope they went to the right site. I hope that link got fixed. I hope they didn't notice this typo. And if there's that moment of hesitation, then I would really challenge you that it's time to review that, whether it is your website, your business card, whether it's the shoes you wear when you walk into a networking event, whatever it is. Oftentimes our head can make excuses or justify, but our gut doesn't lie. So really feel that. And again, if you feel the tagline of my book is igniting your brand beyond the limits of good enough. So if you find yourself saying, oh, I don't really like it, but it's good enough. Or, I would change it if I have time, but for now it's good enough. Think about other areas in your life that you wouldn't compromise and really take the time, the effort, the energy, even if it's something that you do yourself or it's something that you do in phases. But really don't settle in your brand, because when you hesitate about it, that's going to cause an instant amount of doubt or mistrust in people that are looking at it as well. I always hate it when someone hands me a business card and they say, oh, don't go to the website. It's going to make me want to look at it more. And again, that trust, that hesitation, that's not the first impression you want to have.
That makes so much sense, Juliet. And let's make sure. Hold on, let me put the spotlight on you. Let's make sure we talk about that, because I think it's important. If any of us are hesitant, and I can't tell you how many times I've met someone who hands me their business card, says, but don't look at the website. It's still under construction.
Yeah.
Or don't judge us by the website. Well, how else am I going to judge you? Right? hundreds of thousands of people that are scrolling
Mhm.
for possibly exactly what you have. And the only thing they have to judge you on is that first impression that your website is going to give them. And if it's not up to par, what are you doing to fix it,
Yeah.
right? What are you doing to
Yeah.
make it the best it can be so that it represents you? You said a lot of things there that I think are important. I love what you said about that haircut, that new suit, the
Mhm.
shoes. You in your keynote, you talk about when you have your car detailed before you
Yeah.
go to a big meeting, you're walking in a shiny, clean car, and you just feel a little bit better, right? You walk with a little bit more confidence, and you talked about it. Feelings matter.
Mhm.
You could have everything else, but how you feel is how people are going to perceive you. And if you don't feel confident, people are gonna perceive you as not confident. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes I hear people that are very confident in person. They're very personable. They have the best elevator pitch, and they can shake the hand. And the type of people we always hear that say that they can sell ice to an Eskimo, and that's great. And that is a very important quality to have. But I always say you're selling to more than one. So let's say that you're on the golf course and you have this great conversation, and you think the deal's in the bag because after 9 holes, you're like, "Oh, this is a perfect alignment." And they say, "Yeah, we'd love to work with your company. I just have to run this by my business partner on Monday, but I'm sure it's a done deal." Then oftentimes that's when the crickets happen. Maybe Monday goes by and we don't hear from them, and Tuesday and Wednesday, and we start saying, "Oh, I was so good in person," which oftentimes we are. But that business partner didn't get a chance to meet you. They weren't on the golf course with you. They didn't hear that confidence or those stories or those case studies. And so oftentimes the only thing they have to go off of is maybe your LinkedIn profile or your website or Googled articles or your blog or things like that. And so some people say, well, it doesn't really matter because I'm really charismatic in person. And I always say that's great, that personal piece is a big part of it. But most of the time, the contract isn't signed right there. It's usually signed a couple days later. And that's when that deeper level of digging is done.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's important to have both of those elements, especially again, if you're selling to more than one.
Yeah, and that is such a common mistake. I hear that all the time from coaches who are struggling. Like
Yeah.
they're so excited, they had a great conversation, and I haven't heard anything, right? Because we're often selling it to the everybody in the background, whether it's the spouse,
Mhm.
the partners,
Mhm.
the co-founder, right? Somebody else that's going to be a part of that decision. And I've always said, and you hit right on it, they can't sell you as well as you can sell you. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what a great experience they had. If they're not a sole decision maker, you haven't closed the sale until you've talked to the other influencers that are going to be part of that decision. And so you've got some work to do still. That makes so much sense, Juliet. I keep saying makes sense, and I realize your hows makes sense. You and I are both fellow Y coaches. How are
Mhm.
you finding, knowing your client's Y operating system? Are you incorporating that as you build their brand, or what insights has it given you? How has it changed the way you practice? Because I talk to a lot of coaches. Some use it primarily. For me, it's the first tool I use with everyone I
Mhm.
work with. How has it been for you?
Yeah. For me, a lot of what I do is around messaging, and it's creating that foundational messaging, whether it's your elevator pitch, your tagline, your slogan, your header on your website. Maybe it's more website copy. A lot of what I do is in that messaging. I help a lot of authors with the back cover of their books or maybe their bio for when they walk out on stages. And those things seem so simple. It seems really simple to write a tagline or to write an elevator pitch. I mean, you're only talking for a couple sentences, but I was actually just in Austin, Texas. I live in Nebraska, but I was just in Austin, Texas over the weekend with a client, helping him develop a brand new company from scratch. And we spent probably an hour and a half on a 2 sentence elevator pitch. And you wouldn't think that it would be that hard, but those foundational pieces, if they're done right, only need to be done once, but it really takes a lot of intention and a lot of creativity. And so one of the things that I do is I use a why assessment so that I have those extra language, those extra pieces that maybe that person couldn't communicate themselves. But it's that deeper level of knowledge. And oftentimes by incorporating their YOS into their bio or their tagline or their elevator pitch, it's like this almost magic wand of, oh my gosh, that sounds just like me. Now, I use that tool and a lot of other tools. I have some proprietary tools that I use, but ultimately, it's all to gather data or matter, however you want to look at it. And the more that I can have, the more efficient it is and the more true it is to that person. And so, especially when it's a sole proprietor or a founder, I love using their YOS to incorporate into their message because ultimately, I feel like whatever your YOS is, that's the people you're going to connect with the most. And so, for example, if someone's why is contribute, they're going to want to find other contribute. So the more that we can bake that into their messaging from the start, they're going to naturally align with clients that fit them better.
So that Gary Sanchez line, if you tell people what you believe, you attract people who believe what you believe. And so if your why is contribute, you believe in making a difference, making a positive
Mhm.
impact. So you help people incorporate that into their
Yeah.
messaging. So they're attracting people that are looking for that and also probably have that as part of their makeup. I came home and talked about you to my wife and daughter. You have a very amazing story of resilience and how
Mm.
you are where you are. You're very young and you're very successful, but that doesn't happen overnight. You've had some trials in your life. Tell us about how you were able to overcome. Give us a little bit
Yeah.
of background, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, in
Sure.
terms of you're becoming a very young mom and
Mhm.
being, in a place that maybe wasn't so good. How did you get out of that, and how did you become this incredibly confident alpha female that just helps men, women, and companies succeed through that powerful voice and personality
Yeah.
and strength that you bring to the table?
Thank you. Yeah, just a little bit about my story. I actually moved out from my parents at 15, lost a parent at 17, really was married young and had my first daughter at 20. I actually had all four of my kids by the time I was 25, 4 and 5 years, and always was very hardworking, very driven. I ran my photography business while I was raising my kids. I always stayed home with them, and for 8 years, I shot weddings every weekend, and so I was still able to make a six-figure income while staying at home with four kids. And I think that better way was like I always knew there was a solution. I always knew that if I thought outside the box, that little bit of a challenge of mine, that I could figure out a way. And it may not look like the traditional way, but that was okay. And then 10 years ago, I actually left that marriage with my four kids, clothes on our backs. We had $3.74. We left in a moment and had to start completely over. At this time, I was also caring for my mom with stage 4 cancer, homeschooling children at this time, moving a lot, along with a few years of protection orders and victims advocates and a custody battle and just all of it. But I think that through it all, I knew I could do it. I had confidence that I could, if I was willing to think outside the box, put my nose down, I could solve problems. I've always been a problem solver. And anything I look at, that's how I look at it. I look at it as this is just another problem and there is a solution. And that's really where I come from. So it's been 10 years now, and I've turned that $3 into $3 million of real estate, a branding agency. I've written 2 books, just a lot of things. And people often, kind of think of it as an overnight success. And it's not. I can tell you it's, 10 years of really hard work. And it's far from over yet. But I just always knew that there was a solution, that there were people that I could reach out to. I feel like I'm a natural super connector, and I wasn't afraid to ask for help. I was never too proud to, if somebody said, "Can I bring you a meal?" or "Do you need a place to stay?" I always said yes. And now I'm fortunate to be in a place where I'm able to do that for other people now. Now I'm able to be the house people can stay in if they need a place, or a co-signer if they need one, or really just believe in other people. And so it is full circle. It's been a really beautiful 10 years. I'm remarried now to a wonderful man who's actually works in my company with me, who has stepped into this father role with 2 feet in. And so, so I think it always looks like it's magic or that it just happens, and it doesn't. We've renovated 4 historic buildings in the past 6 years, adding commercial spaces and Airbnbs. And oftentimes people say, "Oh my gosh, I would never have the energy." I mean, a lot of these buildings, they're from 1888. I mean, a lot of them are in really rough shape when we get them. And then when it's done, people say, "Oh, I'd love to do something like that." So it's interesting how when it's done and it looks easy, people want to jump on board. But they also know that, I mean, we work every night and weekend on these projects. I don't really watch TV. I do a lot of reading, but there's also always sacrifices. And so I think that, when you look at anyone's life and you say, "Oh, I'd love to have that life," we really don't know what's behind the scene. We don't know the heartache. We don't know the trials, and we don't know that the work that they put into it. And so I just always encourage people, like, you can do whatever you want. I'm always the one that encourages people to dream bigger, to go bigger, to think outside the box, to go for it. But also realizing that there's always sacrifice, and that has to be a part of the puzzle as well.
Yeah, Juliet, man, first of all, congratulations. I think
Thank you.
you need to be congratulated, and for one for your success, two for your commitment to your family. Is it 3 girls and a boy?
Yeah, I have 4
Three-
teenagers right now. Yeah, 3 girls and a boy.
Yeah, because I remember you shared pictures. I think you had prom or
Yeah,
something going on, homecoming,
yeah.
and you shared your beautiful girls. I didn't get to see your son, but um, you know, so many people take for granted what it takes to get this done. And what I love about your story is I know that there is someone out there that is in the early stages of their career, and they may have 2 or 3 little
Mhm,
ones running around, and they may
mhm.
not be in an ideal situation. Gary and you and I talked about what he called it fearlessness is,
Mhm,
what
mhm.
is it that allowed you to make the decision to say, you know what, I can do better than this. And
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to take my 4 kids and the clothes on our
Mhm.
back and $3.74. I trust that I can make it happen. Where does that come from for Juliet Wright?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've always had a pretty big tolerance for risk, and one way that I always look at risk is we take a risk every day. I mean, walking across the street is a risk. Getting in our car is a risk. Wearing high heels when you're walking up and down stairs all day, I mean, that's a risk. And so one of the things I've always reminded myself, and now I try to remind other people, especially if they say like, "I could never do that," or "How did you know how it's going to end up?" I always remind people that we take risks every day, and so it's a muscle that we're building. But it's also calculated risk. I always look at the pros and cons. For me, decided to make that change was really the example that I was leaving for my girls, and ultimately I just had to think, if they were in a relationship like this someday, what would I tell them? Would I tell them to stay? Would I tell them to go? And as soon as it was clear that I would tell them to go, and I would help them leave, and I would be fully supportive, that's when then it was clear for me. Actually, my daughter, who would have been 7 at the time, left me a note on my computer. I actually shared in my Red Thread book. I actually have a picture of the note, and it just said, "Mom, I hope you're okay. Are you okay?" And that note to me was one of the final straws, because I think in my head, I could tell myself, "You're okay. Your business is good. Your house is good. The kids are good." And I always told myself that I could just be okay. As long as everyone else was good, I was okay just being okay, just getting by. And when my daughter left me that note, and now she's 17 and very, very empathetic, and that was the first time I read that note, and I thought, wow, I'm not okay. I'm not even okay anymore. And so that was when I decided to leave. And it was ultimately in the middle of an argument. And and I always think of that. It's easy for us to look at the other people's lives or from the outside perspective. And so oftentimes if I have a hard time making a decision, I do look at it that way. If this was a friend, if this was a coworker, if this was a client, if this was one of my kids, what advice would I give? And then I try to keep that advice true to myself. And for me, that's the easiest way. Sometimes I do that through journaling, sometimes just through going on a walk. But I feel like that third party perspective often is what makes a difference for me.
Juliet, thank you, first of all, for sharing, and thank you for being so open about that. What's something that you're go back and look at your 20-year-old self or your
Mhm.
10-year ago self. What would you tell Juliet? Or what would you tell that person that today is in that situation and needs to make a
Yeah.
decision? What would be most helpful? What would have been most helpful for you to hear from your future self? Or
Yeah.
what would you tell someone who comes to you for advice today to help them take that leap and move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 39 now. I'll be 40 in May. And so it's kind of interesting because I was married at 20, divorced at 30. Now I'm almost 40. And I feel like it's just that message that the best is yet to be. The best days are ahead.
Mhm.
And I think if we can just keep that mindset, just continuously tell ourselves, the best is yet to be. And I do believe in that. I don't mind getting older. Again, I lost both my parents very young, and so for me, getting older is truly a gift. And
Mm.
I look at it as the best is yet to be. The best days are ahead, and not saying there's not going to be some dark days in the middle, but if we really have that mindset that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, I think that's what gets me up. The other line I always like to say is that God made days 24 hours for a reason. So even on the hardest days, even on a day that's been really hard, just reminding myself that it's only 24 hours. Tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow's a new start, and I'm really grateful for that, because there are some days that I think if the day would have been even 25 hours or 26 hours, I probably would have had a really hard time. But I feel like God knew what he was doing, and that 24 hours oftentimes is all that we can handle. And
Yeah.
so just keeping that perspective.
Love that. Thank you so much, Juliet. Let me ask you this question. We talked a little bit in the pre-show about what you've got going on. And you
Yeah.
mentioned in 2025, you're gonna actually do some retreats with
Yeah.
authors. And what's exciting to me as a new founder, as with a new company, we all have a story inside of us that we want to tell.
Mhm.
I've been a part of a cooperative book, so I've written a chapter for a book, but I know I have a book inside of me. And I know there are others
Mhm.
out there that think, hey, I know I have a book inside of me. And you help people, what you're talking about at these retreats in 2025, and they're at a fun place.
Yeah.
And I hold three of them. Sounds like a fabulous opportunity for somebody who's ready to just take that next step.
Yeah.
They've checked off a few boxes and they said, you know what, the next thing I need to do is be a published author. So tell us
Yeah.
about that amazing project you've got going on in 2025.
Yeah, so this is a joint venture that I do with my best friend. Her name is Kira Brenton, and she has a website called kirabrenton.com, and her publishing house is called Joan of Arc Publishing. And she's who I published my books through. And now my branding agency does the book covers, the formatting, the audiobooks for her authors. And so it's been a beautiful way. She's an incredible person to help you write books. She helped me write both my books in 5 days. That's really her specialty. And so I just got back from the British Virgin Islands on a private island that she rented, and she really helps with writing the books. And then I help a lot with the branding and the marketing, because oftentimes authors are also coaches or speakers or entrepreneurs. And so I love, once a book is done or once someone kind of commits to being an author, helping them build those, I call them a parallel brand, or parallel, yeah, it's a parallel brand. businesses that they're doing, just like railroad tracks. It's like you may have your speaking brand and your author brand and your consulting brand and your business brand all going together at the same time. And so those kind of brands can be complex because it's hard, just like having multiple kids or multiple businesses, to try to split it, especially when you have big things coming up like a book launch or a trade show or a big keynote. And so we have partnered together really well over these past couple of years. And we just did a retreat. I just got back a couple of weeks ago, and it went so well. We helped 16 authors write books in 5 days. And we said, we got to do this again. So we already have 3, if not 4 dates on the calendar for this next year in April, June, and September. So far, those dates are locked in. But if you are someone that has a book on your heart, whether you want to use this book to advance your business, to advance your speaking, or for me, writing books were really to leave a legacy. I wanted something that could outlive me, that my great grandkids could read and feel like they had an opportunity to get to know me. That's ultimately the reason I wrote my books. So no matter what the reason is, I feel like everyone has a book on their heart, and I just love being a part of bringing these to life with Kira. And so if you'd like any information about that, I can sure tell you more. And there's only about 15 spots per week, but it's a 6-day, 5-night retreat, and it's just life-changing, to say the least.
That's fantastic. And where should people go if they want to find out more information? We know you have a great website. So what's that
Yeah.
website address?
Yeah, you can sure reach out to me. My website is julietwright.co, or my best email is just juliet@tallycreative.com. If you want to know specifically about the adventures, you can go to kirabrinton.com. Either way, but I can sure help connect you. That's probably the easiest. And maybe it's not a book right now. Maybe it's just upgrading your PowerPoint presentation, or maybe it's just you want someone to brainstorm with about how you could maybe yourself start creating live events, or maybe a digital course. Or that's what I love. My favorite thing is to just get on a call and just brainstorm. I'm open source. So what that means is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So sometimes I just help people with 1 or 2 pieces, oftentimes for just a couple $1,000s. And then they can go on to someone else, or maybe they already have a graphic person or a video person on their team. So I just love to have the conversation. And oftentimes being an entrepreneur, especially a solo entrepreneur, is a lonely road. And as much as our spouses or our siblings or our friends love us, oftentimes they have no idea what we're talking about. And so I just always like to be that sounding board for anyone who needs it. You can always just book a call, a 30-minute call on my website, julietwright.co, and we can talk about anything. And oftentimes that 30-minute call is where really, really big dreams come to life.
I love that you have that 30-minute call. And a lot of people will say, you can book a 30-minute call. And then you go to the calendar and there's like no availability for 6 weeks. Your calendar has availability and it's accessible to people. So take Juliet Wright up on that opportunity to learn from her, to listen, to run your ideas by her. I can tell you that she's as energetic as she's coming across on the screen in person. And when you're dealing with her one-on-one, just an amazing human being. Not everyone has the opportunity to meet you in person at a speaking event, right? So thank you for sharing your contact information for your generosity of time. And I love the perspective that you give to that. Sometimes that 30 minutes can be the beginning of dreams coming true. And it truly can be when you're working with the right person, with somebody who's going to help you find a better way, how to make sense of it all, and also challenge you to think differently. And that's something you do so well, Juliet. Is there anything that we should have talked about that I've missed? Because I want to make sure we get squeeze as much juice out of this amazing person as we can today.
No. And one of the things I just would love to share is that if you have any guilt around your brand, oftentimes people say, oh, they're embarrassed because they feel like their brand was homemade when they did it. Or maybe they feel like they've outgrown their brand, or maybe their brand is outdated, or, there's all these excuses. And I just would like to clear out any guilt that you have. I really, when people work with me, it's like, oftentimes they want to start with apologizing or excuses. And I just want to clear all that out. I just always like to say, congratulations. If you made your brand with duct tape and colored pencils, congratulations. You started somewhere. If you outgrew your brand, congratulations. There's a lot of companies who didn't make it to the point you're at.
Right.
Most companies fail within those first 5 years. And so now if you're at year 8 and you feel like you've outgrown your brand, congratulations. This is all really good things. I don't feel that shame and growth can live in the same sandbox. And so it's like we really have to clear any of that shame out. So again, while you don't want to settle for a brand that you always say was just good enough, we're trying to move past that. But once you decide to take that step and you decide to move forward, I would really encourage you to pat yourself on the back, to be proud of yourself, to not play the compare game, and just truly move forward to what's next with confidence, because that's what it's going to take. And that confidence that you have is going to be carried through to everyone who meets you.
I love that. It goes along with my concept of the crappy first draft, the CFD. If you've got a crappy logo, congratulations, you've started. We can improve on something. You can't improve on nothing. And Juliet is exactly, she's a better way person. She can take what you have. She can take your little handwritten scribble and make it amazing and make it something that people recognize you by. Folks that listen to the podcast, they know that I've been wearing this black shirt for a long time, but she re-emphasized for me, hey, what are your colors? Wear them, wear your colors. So we share colors, red and black. And I wear red and black almost every day because that's part of my brand. And you've taught me that. You've taught me so much in the conversations that we had at YCon in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And even in the pre-show today, and of course, sharing your wisdom with our audience has been amazing, Juliet. I just hope you guys will reach out, take advantage, and don't forget, as we always request, to give us a like, give us a subscribe to our channel, and tell your friends about the Lead Different podcast. We love bringing leaders like Juliet to you so you can hear and learn from them, but we also want to make sure that we share them with you and you share them with your friends. So let's get the word out about Juliet Wright and the marketing formula, the logs, the fire, and the accelerant. Coming in hot is her first book. Her second book is Red Thread. Let's make sure we let people know about it. And don't forget to join us next week on the Lead Different podcast. Juliet, what do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not?
Thank you so much for being here, Juliet. And we look forward to premiering your episode and sharing it with your audience and with our audience so we can help more people create amazing brands that energize and, oh my gosh, that are amazing the way you've done already with so many people. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. And thank you, Juliet, for being on the show.
Thank you.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.